And good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Paulo with PG&E. Thanks for joining our Public Safety Power Shutoff public briefing for tonight, Saturday, October 24th. Now, before we provide an overview of this event, I do want to start by saying we do understand how disruptive it can be to lose power, especially right now when so many people are working and going to school from home. We also know that a number of our customers have been affected this wildfire season by shutoffs more than once. In fact, some multiple times, some just last week. We want to thank you for your understanding as we work to keep our communities and our customers safe. Our goal with PSPS events always is to use this as a tool of last resort, and we want you to know that we are working very hard to make them smaller and shorter. Now, tonight we have joining us Scott Strunfeld. He is our meteorologist. He's going to tell us about the forecast in the days ahead. Our incident commander, Mark Quinlan, is going to talk a little bit about the shutoff and the restoration process. And we also have Vanessa Bryan with us tonight. She's with our local customer experience team, and she's going to talk to us about community resource centers and other resources that are available for our customers who are going to be impacted by this event. With us on the phone, we also have several reporters tonight from local media outlets. Following our incident summary, we'll take up to 2 questions from the reporters, and I would remind the reporters on the phone tonight, please hit *1 to get into the queue. So with that, here's where we stand at this hour. We are seeing a dangerous combination of factors with this forecast: high winds, extremely low humidity, record dry fuels on the ground, and severe to extreme drought in certain areas. Now, the National Weather Service has issued a red flag warning from Sunday morning until Tuesday morning, and wind gusts are expected to reach 40 to 60 miles per hour in some areas, and even higher at the peaks. Now, together, these conditions do pose an increased risk for damage to our electrical system, which has the potential to ignite fires. Now, because of this, we are preparing to shut off power to 386,000 customers. That's in 38 counties and affecting 22 tribes. Now, the shutoffs will start in stages, beginning Sunday morning at about 10 a.m. in some areas and then into the evenings. And we expect the majority around 3 to 6 o'clock. Now, once the extreme weather passes in each region, our crews will then begin patrolling the lines for any damage, make any necessary repairs, and then begin safely restoring power. At this time, we expect the weather all clears to most areas between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. on Monday, and then power being restored in stages Monday night into Tuesday, safety permitted. Now, throughout this event, we are ready to support our customers. We've been notifying potentially affected customers. We'll send a 24-hour advance notice today. Customers can also check our online address tool to see if they are included in this event. We're also preparing to open community resource centers, and we've partnered with local food banks and community-based organizations to offer further assistance. We're going to share details on all of this shortly, but for now, I want to turn it over to Scott Strunfeld, our meteorologist, to talk to us about the conditions that we're starting to see. Good evening, Scott.
Great. Good evening, Lindsay. Good evening, everyone. So, yeah, the meteorology team, as well as meteorologists with federal forecast agencies, have been tracking what we have high confidence that this will be the strongest Diablo and fire weather event of the season so far. Essentially, it's going to begin tomorrow, with the peak of the event tomorrow night, overnight, tapering off a little bit on Monday, but we will have some winds lasting into Tuesday. And so all the forecast models that we track, you know, all the global models, the American, the European models, and all the internal information that we have continues to indicate, and we have very good alignment, and thus our confidence is high that this event, you know, will be significant. So well, first, let me start with the event timing. Essentially, we do expect northerly winds to first develop in Shasta County during the morning tomorrow, and then those winds are going to push down the Sacramento Valley, primarily along the west side. And then shortly after sunset tomorrow is when the main event begins, and we'll see a very strong push of dry winds develop over the northern and central Sierra Nevada. And some of those winds will be mixing down lower into the foothill locations in some of our previous PSPS events. And we'll also see those winds develop in the North Bay Mountains tomorrow night as well. And then we expect those strong winds to move down into the East Bay and Santa Cruz Mountains near about midnight tomorrow night. And then they'll kind of work their way south. So the strong winds and the main event are expected to, taper off during the morning hours. Kind of on Monday between 8 and 11 a.m. We'll see a little bit of a lull during the midday time frame, but then we expect another round of winds to come in late Monday into Tuesday over some of our elevated terrain and favorite canyons, with winds essentially decreasing by all areas Tuesday. And so we'll be monitoring that very closely to issue all clears and start the restoration process as soon as we're able to do so and as soon as it's safe to do so. And as Lindsay mentioned in the lead up, this event looks particularly dangerous due to a combination of factors that we continue to track. The first one is that this will be the strongest event of the season and likely the strongest since the big event last year, October 26 and 2017, or 26 and 27, 2019, with forecasted wind gusts topping 70 miles per hour in some areas. We also have an ultra dry air mass moving into California with this event. Essentially, it's going to have very little moisture associated with it, and we do expect widespread relative humidity values in the teens to single digits with this one. And then another factor that's kind of playing into this is the extreme temperatures that we've seen recently. And so the last 6 months, according to NOAA, have been the warmest in the instrumental age, going back to 1895. And so that has led to an exacerbation of the drought that we currently have over California, which 35% of California is in either severe or extreme drought, with the vast majority of that being in Northern California, right where the red flag warning areas are, which you can see on the slide there. And then, as Lindsay mentioned, the fuel moistures are also severely dry, and in many locations, our federal agencies are reporting that fuel moistures out there are setting new daily records for how dry they are. So it's all these, this combination and confluence of kind of extreme factors. It's leading this event to really stand out in my mind, and really any ignition that happens with these type of conditions could lead to a rapidly spreading and catastrophic wildfire growth. And so, federal agencies are aligned that this is a very high-risk event. As you can see on the slide, National Weather Service has issued a fire weather watch and also a red flag warning that covers most of California, primarily across the north, as well as the Sierra Nevada and the Tehachapis down south in Kern County. And so with this event during the peak, we'll see general wind gusts 40 to 65 miles per hour. But like I said, we'll see some of our peaks and ridges and favored gaps and canyons gusts maybe 70 miles per hour and above. I wouldn't be surprised if Mount St. Helena up in the north gusted northwards of 80. I think in the last event, October 27th, one of our PG&E weather stations recorded a gust of over 100 miles per hour, and that is definitely not out of the question in an event like this. Other forecast agencies such as the NOAA Storm Prediction Center as well as NorthOps Predictive Services are also indicating that this is a critical event, the strongest of the season. They also have high risk kind of painted across most of Northern California for this as well. And so maybe the only good news I have for you is that after this event transpires, we're not really seeing any rain in the forecast, unfortunately. I'm looking forward to forecasting for rain one day, but we don't have any on the horizon. However, we also don't have any offshore wind events forecast for the next 10 days after this event is over. So with that, that's the weather, and I'll turn it back to you, Lindsay.
Okay, thanks, Scott. That is good news that we don't see in the long-range forecast another Diablo wind event. So to recap, we've got a red flag warning throughout much of the service territory and much of the state. Low humidity levels, again, very dry fuel on the ground, and it sounds like the winds are going to move kind of north to south and then more easterly or more westerly toward for the Bay Area. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Lindsay.
Okay, thanks very much, Scott. Appreciate that. We want to turn it over to our incident commander now, Mark Quinlan, to tell us a little bit about how we expect this event to unfold and then when restoration could begin. So take it away, Mark.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Good evening, everyone. First, I want to acknowledge the fact that this wildfire season in the year 2020 has been very challenging. And complicating that is the fact that we're all working from home due to the pandemic. times are more challenging this year than in previous years. And we obviously recognize that power outages present hardships, especially during challenging conditions. That's why we try to make these events as small as we can. And when they do happen, we make them as short as possible. And then we provide a number of different resources for our customers to get through the event while it's in play. We do all that. We take this last resort option decision of shutting the power off in the interest of public safety incredibly seriously. And we look at a lot of data, a lot of meteorology data, a lot of field observations by our employees in the field to help inform decisions. As of right now, based on this weather forecast that we just heard from Scott, we're looking at a total event scope of 386,000 customer accounts. That's across 38 counties and 22 tribal areas. The largest event that we've had this year. We've had some previous PSPS events this year, as Lindsay mentioned in her opening. This one's been the largest one in terms of number of customers impacted. It's also the largest one with respect to the geographic area where these unsafe conditions will be that are driven by those high winds, those dry fuels, the very low humidity levels. The map on the right is what the event scope looks like as of this time. We expect it to change slightly overnight as we continue to look for ways to make it smaller. You can see, starting in the Bay Area, the South Bay, we have a little bit of exposure in Monterey. We get into the Santa Cruz Mountains and into East Bay, Alameda County, Contra Costa. We then go into the North Bay, Napa, Sonoma, Lake, Mendocino, all the way up to Humboldt on the North Coast. In the Shasta area near Redding, at the very northern portion of the Sacramento Valley, and then all the way down the Sierra foothills, Butte County, Plumas County, Nevada, all the way into the southern Sierra, those other counties as well, Placer, El Dorado. It's a large scope, there's no doubt about it. These winds start tomorrow around noon. They will start in the north, up in the Shasta-Redding area, and come down the Sacramento Valley. And then at nightfall, that's when they get strong and they pivot from a northerly flow to an offshore flow. That's when we see the majority of the unsafe winds really begin to ramp up. And so from a shutoff perspective, we anticipate starting in the very north at about 10 a.m., between 10 a.m. and noon. And then the rest of the scope that we're going to shut off in a sequential manner to ensure that we do this safely without imposing any additional grid impacts will occur in the afternoon, I would say between 2 p.m. and around 8 or 9 p.m. There is a small section down on the map that you might have a hard time seeing. It's a very small area of scope in Kern County. That's being influenced by the Santa Ana winds that the southern area of the state will be experiencing while we're experiencing our Diablo winds and offshore winds up in the north. We expect a little impact to Kern County. Event comes in a little bit later, and we'll be watching that. It's a little bit of a different weather system, but there is some exposure to the far south of our service territory as well. Next slide, we will review how we're trying to make these events smaller. These are just rough figures. They're subject to change because we all know weather changes, and it's changed already. When we originally scoped out this event, it was much more impactful, nearly 100,000 customer accounts higher than where we are now. But weather conditions have shifted a little bit and fluctuated, and we continue to try to make the event smaller. Here's a couple of ways. On the left, 84,000 customers roughly will avoid an interruption if weather conditions stay constant with where they're being forecasted right now. We could do this a number of different ways. One way is by placing our system in an island configuration. We have two areas of our system one in the Feather River Canyon, one up in Humboldt County, where we could actually place the generating stations and the associated system in an island configuration. That allows us to take the transmission lines that travel through the dangerous high-risk areas. We can take those out of service and not lose customers. We can still keep them energized because the generating stations will be actually serving that local community, that local load. Another way that we do that is just by sectionalizing and switching. We've done a lot of work in the off season between 2019 and 2020 to install as many switches as we can that allow us to reroute the power. And we do that in close vicinity to the high probability fire risk areas, such that when we have events like this, we can make the events very, very small. On the right is the microgrids and generation plan. We have various substations that we're able to install generation at, and mid-feeder microgrids that are out in local communities that keep critical businesses open, gas stations, grocery stores, things of that nature, things to help society move along. We have plans where we can place these generating units and these microgrids out there into the field and keep little local areas energized, while the surrounding area that's in the, you know, the high country, if you will, we can keep the local areas safe and on and energized, and take out and de-energize the lines that traverse through that rough country. Let's talk a little bit on the next slide about next steps once we get through the weather. So this is how we restore after public safety power shutoff events. It's a 5-step process, and it always starts with the meteorology team, who is constantly monitoring the weather, to tell the other operations units in the emergency operations center that it's safe when conditions have reduced to a point to where it's safe to begin patrols and restoration. We refer to that as the all clear process. When we get an all clear, it means we're safe to go out and start restoring. The first thing that we do is patrol the infrastructure. We want to make sure that while it was off, that nothing happened to it. We want to go out and inspect to make sure that we don't have any damage. And oftentimes, every PSPS event that we've ever had, we see damage cases. We'll see trees into our facilities, we'll have wires down, we'll have poles down in some cases. So we definitely expect some damage cases with this much wind, these high speeds that Scott had mentioned to you. So we go out and we patrol that infrastructure. We do it via air, we do it via ground, and we do it via foot in some cases in those hard to get to areas. Once we identify areas of damage, we dispatch repair crews right behind our patrol crews so that the repair crews can fix things, remove debris off of our infrastructure while the patrol continues. And we do that very deliberately. We want to be able to work sequentially in parallel so that we don't have to de-energize or patrol the whole line safe and then go back and restore. There's opportunities to turn the lights back on as we go. And the more we do that, the faster your service comes on, and that's very, very important to us. Once we do patrol everything clear and safe, then we restore the power, then you get a notification that your power's been restored. So next slide will show some of the methods that I mentioned. We have 65 helicopters that we intend to dispatch on this event. To do those air patrols. We also have an airplane that has a high resolution camera with some added technology that can allow us to see our infrastructure at night from very far distances away so that they don't conflict in the airspace with the helicopter patrols. And we're going to leverage those two air resources to try to restore our system and patrol it as quickly as we can. And then those air assets complement a pretty sizable ground force of men and women out there that are doing everything that they can to get you back in lights as soon as we can safely. So with that, Lindsay, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Hey, quick question for you. I know there are a number of start times with this particular event because we have a larger event than we've had this season. What's the best resource for customers to be able to see the updated information regarding when power will be off in their areas?
The best way that I would recommend to our customers is to visit the PG&E.com website. So it's pge.com/PSPS updates. From there, there's a number of different resources. You can see every county. You can see start and stop times. There's an address lookup tool that you can put in your address or a family member's address to see what the status is, and it'll provide you all those estimated times of restoration.
Okay, good. Thanks. Thanks very much. Okay, so to get a look at how we're supporting our customers who are going to be potentially impacted by this event, we want to turn now to Vanessa Bryan. She's with our local customer experience team. Good evening, Vanessa.
Good evening, Lindsay, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. As my colleagues have already mentioned, we understand that fire season has been particularly challenging and it's been impactful to you, our customers. And so I'd like to share ways that we're working to make this experience and all our public safety power shutoff events less difficult for you. So first, we've prepared 110 community resource centers throughout the potentially affected areas. And these centers will be open tomorrow, Sunday, as early as 8 a.m. in some areas and beginning at 3 p.m. in other areas. Now, they'll stay open until 10 p.m. and then we'll keep them open daily from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. until all the customers in that area are restored. These locations will provide charging for medical and personal devices, restrooms, water, light snacks, and additional information. Indoor facilities will also offer air conditioning and ice. If the temperatures dip, certainly we'll have heating, we'll have blankets available, and we have 33 of these indoor community resource centers for this event. I do want to reassure you that all of the centers reflect appropriate COVID-19 health considerations. We follow state and county guidelines, and that includes physical distancing, temperature checks, and we're administering those before you ever enter an indoor facility. We're regularly sanitizing any surfaces. A lot of the outdoor sites are more of a grab and go type situation, so you can grab some information, a power bank to charge a mobile device, etc. And I do want to remind customers that all of the staff at these locations will be wearing facial coverings, and we also request that our customers who are visiting these locations wear facial coverings. Now, you can find a complete list of locations and hours at pge.com/PSPS updates. It's a great website for any of the information specific to this event that you'd like to find out. Now, in addition, I'd like to talk a little bit about how we're overall supporting our customers when we think about communications. We've been communicating directly with potentially affected customers, and we started sending out notifications about this PSPS event on Friday afternoon, which is approximately 2 days before we anticipate shutting off the power. And as Lindsay mentioned, we sent another watch notification earlier today. Now, those notifications are available in 13 different languages, and they're sent through text message, email, and phone calls. They include estimates of the time the power is expected to be shut off and the time we estimate we're going to be able to restore power for each individual address, as well as information on resources for our customers, links that will be helpful. And we also have precautions in place for our customers who rely on power for medical devices or independent living needs and that are enrolled in our medical baseline program. Now, for this event, that's it's almost 25,000 medical baseline customers that will potentially be affected by this event. So we ask these customers to confirm that they've received our PSPS notifications. And if we don't get confirmation, we continue to attempt to reach them. Now, as of this afternoon, we've confirmed confirmed 95% of these customers have received our notification about this potential event. And if they do not reply, again, we're going to continue to send those messages. We even go out and knock on the door as a kind of a final attempt. Once the power is shut off, we continue with wellness calls. We really want to make sure folks are aware of what's happening and they can put their emergency plan into place. And on average, those customers who have not acknowledged yet have received about 16 attempts from us as of this afternoon. So we'll continue those into the evening and again tomorrow morning. So if you're a medical baseline customer, it's really important that you acknowledge these communications. Our website is updated with the latest information. We continue to update new resources available, and our call centers are staffed. They're actively responding to customer calls, and they're available for you should you need anything. We are also supporting our customers with medical, accessibility, financial, language, and aging needs. To do that, we're partnering with 54 community-based organizations in these efforts. And this includes the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers that provide emergency planning, portable backup batteries, hotel stays, and accessible transportation for qualifying customers. We're also partnering with local food banks and Meals on Wheels. And through these partnerships, customers who experience food loss as a result of the power being shut off can go to a participating food bank and get food replacement. To see a full list of these participating independent living centers, food banks, and other resources that are available for you, please visit pge.com/disability and aging. And there's more information. We have a list of all of the participating food banks, and you can always call 211. 211 is a service in counties that has stood up, and they have a list of available support services specific to that county, not specific to PSPS events or PG&E, but a really great service that we encourage you to take advantage of should you be in an emergency situation and need to prepare and get some information about what resources are available to you. So in closing, I'd like to reiterate that we do understand that these are difficult times and these shutoffs are challenging. And we're doing everything we can to make these events less difficult on you, our customers. So thank you for your understanding, for your patience with this public safety power shutoff and all that we're doing to keep our customers safe. So I'd like to turn it back to you, Lindsay.
All right, thanks very much, Vanessa. So 110 CRCs are being stood up for this event, and it sounds like the earliest ones would be open around 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and folks can go to our website to get more details on where those CRCs are located and the hours and the services they provide.
That's correct. The times that they will open really coincide with that range of shutoff times that Mark mentioned earlier. So the website is really the best place to get the most up-to-date information.
Great. Okay, thanks a lot, Vanessa. We do have some members of the media joining us today, so I want to thank them for being on the phone, and we're going to go to them now. I want to remind them you need to hit *1 to get into the queue. Ask you to ask 2 questions off the top, and then we'll get them to the right subject matter expert. So joining us tonight, I want to thank Mallory Metz. She's with the San Francisco Chronicle. Mallory, do you have some questions tonight?
I do. Thank you so much. You had mentioned that you had reduced the number of outages from Friday night. From our look, it looks like around 15%. The National Weather Service tells us that the forecast remains just as dangerous. So what specific weather changes or other factors have caused you to reduce the number of outages?
Okay, we'll have Mark take that question. Do you have another question you'd like to ask as well, Mallory?
Do you know when you're flipping from a watch to a warning?
Okay. Mark, I think these are both for you. The first question was the reduction in scope, which I think you can address both through weather and then through a number of ways we're looking to reduce scope of these events, and then also the watch warnings. If you could explain that, please.
Yep, I got both of them, Lindsay. Thank you. Mallory, great questions. Thanks a lot for asking them. The first one about scope, if I'm reading your question right, you're hearing that we have reduced the scope, but there's still unsafe weather conditions out there from the National Weather Service, like red flag warnings and things of that nature. And so I'll start by saying that red flag warnings are just one of several things that we look at before we make the decision to shut off. We also look at the wind speeds, the relative humidity, the fuel moisture, dead fuel moisture, live fuel moisture. We look at a number of things prior to making the decision to shut off. We did see some favorability with respect to the wind speeds. They were actually forecasted a little bit stronger than Scott had reported out originally. They backed off a little bit, and just that little bit allowed us to start reducing the geographic footprint. I mentioned in my remarks other ways that we look to make the event smaller. One way is by sectionalizing and installing generation and islanding where we can, but it really all starts with weather. And if the weather improves and the overall area of impact gets smaller, it provides more options for the team and I to look to make it smaller, right? So that's hopefully answers your first question. The second question between watch and warning, we're going to make that decision in the morning early because the forecasted times of when the unsafe weather is going to occur is 10 a.m. in the morning, noon, a little bit afternoon, during the afternoon before we get into nightfall. So we don't want to make the 100% warning notification now, because we would like the meteorology team to look at scope again overnight when we get our new updated high resolution models. We get different forecasts that we look at to help inform the decision. And if there's opportunities to make it even smaller, that's exactly what we're going to do. But we're always going to do that safely. So thanks a lot for the questions.
All right, thanks, Mark. We want to go now to the Santa Rosa Press Democrat and Julie Johnson. Julie, good evening.
Hi, thank you so much. I wanted to start with a question. 1 year ago, almost to the day, there was a public safety power shutoff and the Kincaid fire started in Sonoma County. And I want to ask, if similar conditions arise again as they're forecast to do, what confidence can you give people that this will be different?
Okay, and then do you have a second question as well, Julie?
Yes, for a second question, I was hoping PG&E could provide some more specific numbers for Sonoma County, both customers impacted, also how many fewer impacted because of microgrids, sectionalizing, islanding, and those types of measures.
Yeah, I don't know if Mark has the specifics for the county numbers at his fingertips, but we can certainly get back to you after this call, Julie, with the specifics on Sonoma County. Mark, can you talk a little bit about, and maybe Scott wants to jump in here too, because I think the conditions during this event were very similar to conditions about a year ago. And can you talk about your level of confidence in the PSPS process and what we're trying to achieve?
I can, and Julie, thank you very much. Appreciate you being on tonight and talking about that. I want to start last question first to the best of my ability, and these numbers would be a little high level, but I look at Sonoma County specifically. My numbers are roughly 50,000 in the county, and that's a combination of Sonoma, Napa, Lake, so there's probably a little bit less number due to that are really impacting Sonoma specifically. We do and have and will continue to look for ways to reduce. We do have some microgrid customers that will be carried. We're estimating right now between 5,000 and 7,000 customers all across that scope that I showed you. Can't really tell you exactly at this briefing pinpointed to the county that we're asking about, Sonoma. But as Lindsay mentioned, we can follow up with that. Just wanted to provide you a little bit of context. And yes, 10/26 of 2019 was the strongest weather event that we've seen here at PG&E. And as you correctly stated, we had a public safety power shutoff event on that day. And the event, if you look at the two, and in fact, a lot of the weather agencies are comparing this weather system to that weather system because it's so evenly matched, if you will, on a number of different scales. If I look at the number of customers that were were impacted by that event last year versus this year, the scope is a lot smaller this year. A lot less customers are impacted this year. And there's a few reasons why that is. We've done a lot of work on the off season, installing those sectionalizing devices, looking for those microgrid locations. A lot of it is the meteorology capabilities that we have and the more granular tools that we have that allow us to pinpoint the weather risk areas. So happy that we're less than half of what was impacted last year at about the same time, but highlights the dangers in October. So thanks a lot for your questions. Lindsay, back to you. You might be on mute.
I was. Thanks a lot, Mark. Now we also have on the line KOVR's Heather Jansen. Heather, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. I only have one question, so I'll start with that. We've seen in the past when people have struggled, when they're unable to get to businesses and pharmacies that are, without power or unable to run off of generators. Will places like these major centers and pharmacies be impacted, or can they be helped by PG&E microgrids this time?
Mark, I'm going to send that one back to you. I think we're getting a question about the microgrids and how we're able to keep, I think it's sort of Main Street type areas energized during these events so that those types of services are available. Can you talk a little bit about the work we've done in the last year on microgrids?
I can. Heather, that's exactly what we've done. We understand that some customers and some towns and cities exist out there, and they're surrounded by wildfire risk, and the electric system that feeds those areas go through very dangerous country. But when you're in the middle of the town, it's streets, it's sidewalks, it's parking lots, it's business, it's churches, grocery stores, things of that nature, to your point. And so we've done a lot of work to identify a lot of microgrid locations where we could actually keep Main Street on, right, the town, but turn off the areas that start going up into the dangerous zones, right? So we've scoped a number of these locations out. We had 2 of them that were in service last year. We've added several more this year, and we'll continue that effort. But really what it comes down to, it's like creating a small island just for Main Street. Here's the gas station. Where are the critical areas? How does our system actually serve these areas? And what can we do to sectionalize it and kind of isolate it away from the danger? And then once you do that, you have to have a way to connect a power source to it to use all those wires that are de-energized and isolated away. That's where the generation comes in, and that's what we call a microgrid. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Mark. We have one other reporter on the line with us tonight from KPIX. Betty Yu, are you on, Betty?
Yeah, I am. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to know what you say to people who've experienced the recent outages and fires in the past, what PG&E has done to restore their trust, specific to the Bay Area, as far as, what do you think the biggest improvements are that would make it different this time around?
So Mark, if you would take the first part of that question and address some of the improvements we've made operationally to make the events smaller and shorter, and then maybe Vanessa, you can talk a little bit about what we've done to augment our services to our customers who are impacted when we do call a PSPS event. So Mark, can we start with you?
Sure can, and thank you very, very much for bringing up those questions. I can tell you a number of things that we've done between 2019 and 2020 to make these events smaller. All starts with weather. So put a lot of investment into weather meteorology tools that allow us to start off smaller to begin with. And then there's been a lot of work on the system itself to install more switches, gives us more operational flexibility, allows us to reroute things and keep the areas smaller. We've installed more than 600 brand new devices on the system we call them switches, and they allow us to kind of sectionalize and make things smaller. And all of them are remote controlled. So our control centers have the ability to actually hit a button in their SCADA system, and the device in the field will actually isolate and operate and keep that area small. So a lot of investment in the infrastructure. There's also been nearly 40 of those same switches installed on our big transmission lines so that we can reroute the power as well. A lot of similarities between transmission and distribution with the wires and the switching and the isolation. So those are some of the things that we can do to make them smaller. In some cases, though, depending on whether weather is, you might still have folks that are fed from lines that cannot be switched or rerouted. And in those instances, that's where we start the generation part of the plan. And you heard from the last reporter with the last question about keeping Main Street up and lights. We do that. We have larger generation plans that we put in play. If a transmission line feeds a substation and the transmission line has to be taken out, the customers are in the safe area, but how do we keep them energized? So we use generators, like utility scale generators at our substations in select areas to keep those folks energized. So if you look at all of those things in the aggregate, that contributes to a much smaller event than what we had the capability to deliver on last year. This is the 5th event of the year for 2020 for public safety power shutoffs. And I look at all of them, and I look at how many customers and how many people that have been affected. And we take it extremely seriously. We understand all of the impacts to people, folks that are vulnerable, the elderly, businesses large and small, take it incredibly seriously. But the work that I referenced actually has delivered on average about half, between 50 and 60% smaller this year. We have the ability to go back and compare what we had last year versus what we have this year, because it's important to us. It helps inform what we're going to do next year to make them even smaller again. So been successful in that area. Thanks a lot for your question.
All right, thanks, Mark. Vanessa, do you want to add anything to that with respect to what we've been doing to try to support our customers?
I would. Thank you, Lindsay. First we started with listening to our customers. And what we heard following the events of last year was that they need better information sooner, and they need to make sure that the tools that we provide them to get that information are reliable. So we started with revamping our notifications to our customers to include more granular information that they can use to make decisions, like what time is the power expected to be shut off? When do we expect to get the all clear? And what time can they expect the power to be restored? They told us that was really important to them, and we worked both operationally and from a communications perspective to make that happen. The next thing is we really bolstered our website and provided more information. We adjusted it so that in situations where there's low bandwidth, customers can still get the information they need. The pages load faster, and again, being able to get that information to make decisions about their well-being. As Mark mentioned, we additionally knew that our customers that are still impacted and reliant on power for medical or independent living needs have an even greater impact. And so we worked really diligently to form partnerships with a number of community-based organizations that these customers already know and trust. And frankly, these organizations know what they need more than we do. And so we're able to form those partnerships. California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, for example, has independent living centers up and down the state that work with customers to form an emergency plan. If that plan needs to include backup power, they will look at getting them a portable backup battery. If they need continuous power, they will coordinate a hotel room for them, accessible transportation to our CRCs, really anything to try and minimize the impacts. And then we expanded that, and we've got nearly 50 partnerships with food banks, Meals on Wheels, different in-language partnerships so that any customer can get the message and be prepared. And so we're still listening, and we're still working to get even more partnerships to, again, try to make these events minimize the difficulty that our customers experience when we do shut off the power. So really appreciate the question. We know we have opportunity to continue to rebuild trust, but certainly moving in the right direction in terms of the changes that we have been able to make from last year to this year.
All right, thanks very much, Vanessa. I also want to thank Scott Strunfeld, our meteorologist, and Mark Quinlan and the media for joining us tonight as we wrap up. We do want to encourage all of our customers to be prepared and have a safety plan. We invite you to visit safetyactioncenter.pge.com for tips on how you and your family can prepare for a PSPS event. And for all the latest information about this PSPS event, we ask that you go to pge.com/PSPS updates. And with that, thank you very much for joining us. Stay safe, everyone.